Good morning. Well, that's not a good start. Let me try. Bear with me 1 second. Let me press the right button. Good morning. I was playing around in the background. It's me, and it's my own fault. I do apologise. Morning, everyone. How we were doing? How the devil are you doing this fine day? Very busy over on Instagram this morning. I don't know why that is, but good morning to everyone that's watching over there. Mark Whiting is in the house. The wee doggy is feeling better. Yeah, she spent the best part of a day under the desk. Very quiet. Didn't particularly eat a great deal, but yeah, she's okay this morning. I mean, listen, I am faced with a bit of a trauma coming up. Obviously, I'm going to Las Vegas in the beginning of March, and everybody that lives in this house is going with me. So she's going. The dog is going into kennels. 14 and a half years old. I may be overreacting because, by and large, she's cheerful and everything else, but not entirely sure. Gary Muirhead is here, as we've already said. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? Loads and loads of stuff to get through today. We've got some good, we've got some bad, and we've got some indifferent as well. And also there's a kind of an accidental guest appearance. Kind of. I'll save that for when we do our voyage to Vegas, which is our ConExpo preview. You'll see we have a glimpse of somebody we don't get to see very often. Gary says, "How long have you been doing this?" Yeah, the whole thing, the whole live streaming thing, 6 years. Well, 6 years, bar about 2 weeks. That's 3 weeks. I've been doing this show for 5 years. You'd think. See, the problem is I have various layouts on here that I can summon. Before I come onto the show, I test the sound, test the vision, test all of the things. But then I found a few bits and pieces. I thought, the chaps might be interested in that. I threw those in. They changed the layout, and I forgot to recheck. You get the idea. Anyway, as I say, loads of stuff to get through today. So without further ado, let me take Gary out of the way while he's mocking me for my continued mistakes. I'm going to roll the intro and I'm not going to post the question of the day. Oh, Jesus, it's going to be one of those days, isn't it? I'm going to roll the intro and I'm going to get this show on the road. You see, I'm doubting myself already now. I on my screen here, it says it's Wednesday, the 4th of February. I just had to check just to make sure that it really was the 4th of February. It is. As it turns out, it is Wednesday, the 4th of February. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming, and the authentic voice of the global demolition industry. In today's show, the Cat 6050, that big old beast, gets a next-gen upgrade. This woman's work, quoting Kate Bush there, this woman's work in a Komatsu mining truck. LiuGong's T-Series wheel loaders demonstrate their versatility, and our countdown to ConExpo series continues as we voyage to Vegas with Steelwrist. Lurking in that Steelwrist video is somebody that some of you may recognize, and I'll give you a clue. It ain't this guy. I think I'm in it. I'm not sure. But it's not me. Anyway, look out for that when we get to it. Plus, in today's edition of Mark's Morning Monologue, Smoke and Mirrors. Yeah, we're talking smoke and mirrors. Stick around for that if you would be so kind. We're going to start with hang on a minute. Something just happened. Mr. Norton just arrived. Morning, Mick. How are you doing, my friend? How is sunny, rainy, overcast, snowy Wakefield this morning? I'm covering all the bases. Yes, let's press the button because we do have a bit of news for you this morning. I'm sure you all leapt out of bed this morning feeling all cheerful and good about the world and what a fine industry we happen to work in and how secure we all are in our specific roles. Think again. This from Construction Index this morning. A regular analysis of the financial health of the UK construction companies of UK construction companies has found a near 50% rise in the number that are in critical distress. Oh, good. The latest red flag alert report from insolvency specialist Begbie's Trainer reports in the fourth quarter of 2025, the number of businesses experiencing critical distress in the construction sector had increased year on year by 46.1% to 9,981, which is bad. It gets worse. There were also 108,213 construction firms found to be in significant distress, which was a 10.9% increase on the year before. The areas of construction industry with the most significant distress were companies delivering the development of building projects, construction of domestic buildings, house building, and specialized design services. High levels of significant distress were also experienced in the trades, with companies delivering electrical installation, plumbing, heat and air conditioning installation among the highest rates. They're bad. Bad as far as the eye can see. You can read all about it over on Construction Index, but yeah, a 50% rise in the number of UK construction companies that are considered to be in critical distress. I don't know what the difference between critical distress and significant distress are. I think if you're in distress, you're kind of in distress, but not good news at all. Bad news all around. Who's just joined us? Let's have a look. Mr. Ford, good morning. And morning greasers, keep them nipples warm. I shall do my best. Andy Delvaux is back with us. Morning. How the devil are you all? Well, Andy, I can speak only for myself. I'm doing pretty damn fine. Yeah. Listen, I'm among friends here. I'd like to think I'm among friends here. Had a bit of a bad couple of days ago. Just wasn't feeling it. I wonder, to be honest, if it's the fact that I want to be in Las Vegas. And I'm not, I don't want to move there, but it feels like there's a major thing coming, and it's coming very, very slowly. And I have to say, I was sat here. When would it have been? Probably Friday of last week. I first noticed it, and I thought, yeah, here we go again. Same old stuff. And then lo and behold, today woke up feeling absolutely fine and dandy and good about the world. So yeah, my apology. If I was a bit down, you know why. Dan Cullen is here as well. Good morning, guys. He says. Gary Muirhead says, Steelwrist. Wow, can't wait. You've already seen the video, Gary, because I think you actually flagged it up to me. Almost as bad as Andrew Mountbatten. Listen, nothing's quite that bad, is it? I'm not. I refuse to be sucked into. That's a bad choice of phrase, but I refuse to be drawn into the whole Epstein files thing. But man alive, if you pay any attention to it, it's beyond belief. Beyond belief. Not just the cover up that's ensued ever since, but some of the stuff that was going on. I'm pretty thick-skinned, but it turns the stomach. It really does. And I was thinking about this the other day. Bear with me for 1 second, because I promise, get onto the show itself. You remember when it came out that Jimmy Savile was a wrong 'un in every possible way. He was a wrong 'un. And I remember my kids who hadn't grown up with Jim Will Fix It and Top of the Pops and stuff, my kids looking at him and going, how did you not know? Look at the guy. How did you not know? I now have that feeling about Donald Trump. The weird hair, the orange face, the everything about him just screams wrong 'un. And yet, well, elected twice. Weird, right? Let's have a look. Dan says, "Morning, Andy. Is your mate still with Demcom?" I'll leave him to answer that. Gary Muirhead, what is the government doing to help? Absolutely fuck all. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, they've promised us 1.5 million new homes, which if that had come to some kind of fruition, I think at least the house building sector would be feeling a little bit better about itself. But it hasn't, and probably through the government's failure to recognise the real situation out there. And there's another report as well today. I don't know if I've got it to hand. I did see it coming through. Yeah, now bearing in mind all that I've just said about the state of the construction industry, companies in financial distress, there is a report today from a company called Curry and Brown. I think I can probably put it on the screen. Bear with me a second, because it is in the same vein. Bearing in mind we've got companies already struggling, and there is the news today. This one comes out of Construction Buzz, which says, what does it say? Global construction costs are set to increase by 2.4% in 2026, but uncertainty will test delivery. So, in other words, our costs are about to go up even further. I mean, as if they're not high enough already, and we may not even be able to get our hands on the materials that we need. So that's good, right? It's bad news on bad news, isn't it? Let's have a look. Lots of people saying good morning to each other. Ken Hatcher is in the house with some weather. I'm praying for the weather today because Fred's off out playing golf in an hour or two's time. Dan says that was great picks on the group, Gary. Yeah, I did see those belatedly, but I did see those. Very good indeed. Dan saying about Jimmy Savile, wasn't until he died all the shit came out. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that is where I particularly like your turn of phrase, given what Donald Trump is alleged to have done in the White House the other day. But we waited and waited and waited until Jimmy Savile was brown bread, and we all went, oh yeah, that bloke that looked like a photo fit picture of a nonce. Turns out, guess what he was? Yeah, he was a nonce. We've got exactly the same thing with Donald Trump now. Only the difference is he's still vaguely alive, and we know what we know, and we're doing nothing about it. Jim is in the house, which means we can actually start the show officially, which is good news. The government doesn't help in industry in time of need. No, it doesn't. And to make matters worse, I mean, that's bad. Not helping an industry which is responsible for such a big slug of the nation's GDP. That's bad enough. But it then has a temerity about once every 5 to 10 years to say, oh, we're in recession. We're in recession. It's terrible, terrible, terrible. But don't fear not. Those fine warriors in the construction industry will lead us into the promised land. Right. So you gave us no help whatsoever when times were hard, and now you expect us to drag the country kicking and screaming back to prosperity, do you? Is that how it works? Bastards. It's orchestrated decline, says Mr. Turner. The communist government doesn't want small businesses. They want drones that either work for the state or work directly for big business. I was reading a thing on Substack the other day, and they were saying it kind of tongue in cheek, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought, do you know, they may have a point. They base the premise of it was that there are about 500 around the world. There's about 500 multi billionaires, and everybody else on the planet works for them. And when you think about the reach of a Bezos and a Musk and what's the fucker's name, Zuckerberg, when you think about it, we are all in the service of the mighty. Can't say I'm happy about that, to be perfectly honest. Mick says 1.5 million. 1.5 million homes, not as long as the hole in Starmer's arse faces Mother Earth. Yeah. And listen, I'm not going to go down that road again, but I could have told him if old Kia, picked up the phone and said, Mark, we're planning to build 1.5 million new homes, he would have known from the fact that I was laughing hysterically and dropping the phone that maybe he'd overstepped. He didn't. And who's suffering now? It ain't me. Anyway, what have I done so far? I've done absolutely fuck all, haven't I? Yeah, let's have a bit of Caterpillar before we have a bit of Caterpillar. You'll see. This from Jim says, think back since World War II, we've had recessions, and after each one, small businesses shrink and big businesses get bigger. It's not accident. I'm not entirely convinced it's an orchestrated thing, but I do think that the bigger companies are very, very adept at swallowing up and absorbing smaller companies when they are struggling. It does seem to be like times is hard. Let's rationalize, or we'll snap up. They have some good technology or some good people. We'll snap them up, and there's two more companies gone out of the business, and here we are, slightly bigger as a result. I do think there's a fair bit of that. Gary Muirhead, yeah, Gary, you're absolutely on the money. John Lydon did go on a TV show and talk about Jimmy Savile, and he was basically censored for it. You can find it on YouTube now. That is a thing that exists. But no, he did say that and was basically shut up, censored, taken off air. Well, turns out he was absolutely right. And let's be honest, knowing what we know now about Jimmy Savile, it was hiding in plain sight, wasn't it? I mean, there's footage of him groping girls on top of the pops. Even in the 70s, what he was doing was sketchy. I mean, well, that's even in the 70s, even by the standards of the 70s, it was sketchy. But looking back, terrible. And listen, read some of the Epstein files and what Mr. Trump is alleged to have done. And even if he was just hanging about with a guy that was doing that stuff, is that not enough? When you think back, yeah, Dan says, and Rolf Harris too, and a whole bunch of others as well. When you think back, I don't know when the exact year was, but when it was discovered that John Profumo was having an affair with a prostitute with possible links to the Russians, it was a major outcry, and there's resignations and everything else. We now have somebody who quite clearly has very close links with a paedophile. Nobody even asked the question. Hey, he's the most powerful man in the world. What's you going to do? We'll let him crack on. It'll be fine. How far have we fallen anyway? Right, Caterpillar. I've shown you the Caterpillar advert. Now we're about to show you some Caterpillar product. The Cat 6050, big old beast of a machine. Well, it's got a next-gen upgrade, and it looks like this. don't think they'll have room for that on their stand at ConExpo, which is a damn shame because I'd love to see that up close. Chris Ford, I agree. Some beast. Dan Cullen saying, looks sexy kit. Jumbo Mark II. Oh, yeah, there's a thought. There is a thought. See, Mr. Trump is going to sue a comedian for taking the piss out of him. Yeah, Trevor Noah at the Grammys. And to be perfectly honest, it was quite a. It wasn't a particularly great joke, and it wasn't particularly scathing. It was just, Donald Trump wants Greenland because he can't go to Epstein Island anymore. Really? Is that? Is your skin that thin, Don? Gary says, do we need to go back to the old days where a big house builder employed all their own trades on the books rather than using subcontractors? My personal feeling is that was where the industry started to go awry. But I don't actually think we can. What's the American expression? I don't think we can push the toothpaste back into the tube. I think we've gone too far down our lines of multiple specialist subcontractors, self-employment en masse. I think we've gone too far down that road. But I do genuinely think that would have been better. And I also wonder about it. We're talking about specifically materials costs going up over the next year. But could you not have a better handle on your costs if they were your costs? So imagine you're going to build a stretch of road, and you've allocated 10 million quid for it, and you're Balfour Beatty or Lang O'Rourke or whatever, and you're now okay. Well, we need somebody to do the groundworks for it, so we'll put somebody on that, and that's their cost, which we hope that they'll stick with, but we don't really know. And we hope that there's no rise in cost in materials, well, not materials, but fuel and so on. And then we'll need somebody to go in there and do the paving. That's their price. We hope that their price on materials doesn't go up, their fuel price doesn't go up. That'll be fine. And we need somebody to do like the furniture alongside, the central reservations and the barriers. Well, that's their cost, and we hope those don't go up. If Balfour Beatty did it themselves, here's our costs. There you go. That's what it's going to cost. And if it didn't hit those costs, internal audit, make sure that doesn't happen again, because we need to keep things tight. You'd have thought. Or just me. Mick says John Profumo was an honourable politician and he resigned. Yes, he did. There's the thing. There is the thing that I think is absolutely lacking now. Is even when you think about our various scandals here, Boris Johnson being ambushed by cake and all of that old bollocks that we went through during and post-COVID. If our politicians now had the honour, as Mick has rightly said, the honour of politicians of the past, we wouldn't need inquiries. We wouldn't need the gradual release of the Epstein files. We wouldn't need looks back into Boris Johnson's behaviour while he was Prime Minister. They would have stood up and went, I'm a man of honour. I fucked up. I quit. Nobody does that anymore. Our politicians now do everything they can to get away with stuff, and it's only when we're in the case of Trump, not even when we're presented with evidence. Literally, we will lie to your face until we've run out of lies. Basically, Donald Hitler Trump. Yeah, listen, this I don't want to overstate it because at the end of the day. He hasn't killed 6 million people, but there are some similarities, aren't there? Jim says all this Epstein stuff is nothing new, been going on for years with the top tier of society. It's normal to them. Epstein's real job was the entrapment and middlemaning for the CIA. Yeah, there's a large degree of that. But when look at what Peter Mandelson is alleged to have done. He's advising our government on certain things, but he's briefing Jeffrey Epstein, who is then briefing others so that they can cover their asses before what we do here in the UK. That's espionage. That's spying. That's wrong. Can't think of a better word. My thinking is too many agencies and payroll contractors penny pinching from company to labour. This is self-employed. Is a load of bollocks. Yeah. I have the same feeling, and I promise I'll get back to the show in a moment, but I have the same feeling about agencies, employment agencies within the construction industry, as I have about Donald Trump's tariffs. Donald Trump will present tariffs as the way to, make his country more prosperous. We're gonna slap 100% tariffs on Canada or China or whoever, and he's voter base. Oh, yeah, good old Donald. God bless America and all of that sort of stuff. What they fail to recognise it is them that will be paying the tariffs. That's the way it works. Exactly the same with employment agencies. I need a job. I need, the security of having somebody representing me to go and find me the job and to make sure I get paid and everything else. So we'll have agencies. They're not doing it out of altruism. They're not doing it because they think you're a nice person. They're doing it because they're taking a cut. And let's be absolutely honest, having pushed so many people into self-employment over the past couple of decades, the construction companies and demolition companies that are using those agencies aren't saying, well, we'll pay a bit extra, but we want people off the books. What they're saying is, we'll keep our rates exactly the same. We just need you to shave a bit for yourselves and get us staff. So who's paying for it? The working man, the working woman. Dan says, I love ripping into the payroll and refuse to back down. They do down to the minimal. Yep. Why isn't everyone pushing that Starmer out? He's putting the country down. General elections. I think he's a dead man walking. Has been pretty much since he took up office, to be perfectly honest. We're just got to wait until either he does something so ridiculously stupid, which is possibly only a matter of time, or we have to wait another couple of years and then we go to the ballot box and say, yeah, it seemed like a good idea at the time voting for him, but turns out, no, we got it wrong. Excuse me. Same reason BlackRock's top man and Bill Gates have meetings with Starmer. They're getting the information on the government's next move. They all make money and the taxpayer pays 100%. Dan says lots of agencies get £8 a week per head, kickback from the payroll contractors. This is how they make it, and also get up to £5 an hour as well. Yep. Being an agency, you make a fortune. And when you think about it, they make a fortune largely by doing nothing. I realise they have a lot of people on their books and stuff like that, but let's take Dan as an example. Let's say that they find Dan a position with a company close to his hometown of Watford and say, okay, Dan, we've got you this job, you've agreed the rate and everything else, and that job now lasts for the next 3, 6, 12 months, and they are taking a bit, they're taking a cut every single month or every single week. They're taking a cut. We're long past the point where they did anything. Yeah, okay, they may have earned their kickback by actually introducing Dan to his employer, but they did that months ago, and they're still taking a bit. That's my thought. Leeches they are. Have we done Buy Me a Coffee? I don't think we have. We're going to be talking LiuGong T-Series wheel loaders in a moment, so let me do this first.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, LiuGong T-Series wheel loaders in multiple applications, and they look like this.
Mi sono trovato bene con le macchine della serie T. Reliability of the T-Series is second to none.
The feedback has been listened to because the improvements have been made.
Ich würde jeden raten, der auf der Suche nach einem neuen Radlader ist, sich ein eigenes Bild von LiuGong zu machen.
Jim says, yes, they are leeches. We're talking about employment agencies within the industry. They are leeches, but each employee invited them to feed off them. I don't think they did. I think employers basically pushed people into self-employment and they had no choice. That's my take on it. Going back to what we were saying, or what Dan was saying, was it Dan? Somebody was saying earlier. No, it was Gary. When Gary was saying that, let's do this as a very quick straw poll. If you were given the choice, and let's do round figures. Let's say 30 quid an hour, self-employed, working through an agency where you can be picked up and put down. You get no real support from the agency, and so on down the line. You've got to sort out your own tax and national insurance and all of that sort of stuff. Or £30 an hour working directly for a construction or demolition company who are taking care of your national insurance, your tax, your pension, your workers' rights, your workers' benefits and everything else. Which one would you choose? Would you choose agencies who are creaming off a bit and doing fuck all for you? Or are you going to choose working directly with an employer? Dan says, I agree. I think the employers pushed us to agents and being self-employed. I agree, 100%. Jim says, don't work for agencies if you don't like them taking their cut. Easily said. Dan saying, nice. Looks a nice shovel. Why aren't cabs on loaders suspendable for loading trucks? Suspendable? Do you mean elevating? Don't know the answer on that one. While we're mulling that over, let's crack on. What have we got next? Oh yeah, we're going to have a woman on the show. Stand by your beds. An actual female in the industry. After this,
since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
We'll get to the lady in just a moment, but very quickly, Jim's just said, I work directly for companies as a subby. It suits me. And I'm sure it suits a lot of people as well. But don't forget, you then have the additional cost and responsibility of making sure your ducks are in a row financially, accountants and tax and all that kind of stuff. But I'd work through the agency if the rate was better. Not likely, is it? Good morning, Andy Thornton. Andy Thornton. The reason why there's so many agencies is because the government brought in IR35 because they believed they were losing tax money from sole traders and wanted everyone registered in a taxable way. Yep, that's the absolute truth of it. Dan says, Jim, easy as it sounds, a lot of companies won't take men on direct. The amount I tried and got nowhere. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, it's a shortcut for all concerned, isn't it? An agency. It takes some of the hassle away from both the employer and the employee, but at a cost. And also, don't forget, I've never intended to go down this line, but don't forget the imbalance of working with agencies. If you have some kind of dispute with your employer, you're working as an agency person and you have a dispute with your employer, your agency in all likelihood will not have your back, because they will make far more money out of the employer than they ever will out of the employee. There you are. Ladies, yes, ladies. Ladies on dump trucks, actually. African ladies on dump trucks. She's quite quietly spoken, but I really like this film.
You need strength. You need to be emotionally intelligent. You need to be disciplined and persevere. These are the core values I would say if you want to venture into a male-dominated industry like this. I'm Ruth Ofori. I'm a dump truck driver operator operating the HD 785 equipment. We are here at Ayamfre. We are actually in a gold mine situated at the central part of Ghana. For me, getting into this male-dominated industry was a higher risk decision I took because I was a financial analyst doing an office job. But coming here, you could see that it's not even about the money. It's about you trying to develop yourself, know equipment, and wherever you find yourself, these skills will be transferable. We have 10 to 12 hours shift in the mines, day and night. We go through harsh working conditions too, in terms of noise, vibrations, and all that. We are actually in a dry season as it stands now. So currently, the weather condition is around 33 to 34 degrees Celsius. Very hot. In terms of operations, and you're actually in the cabin, you feel comfortable with the seats, pedals, and everything. When it comes to the air conditioning, they are perfect. Sitting in the cabin, you feel comfortable when you're operating. Yet, these ones are automatic and very easy to move. Looking at my height, yes. I just want people to know I drive this. People think I'm too tiny to be driving this, and I show them it's not even about physique. It's about your brain, how to operate it, and all that. Yes. I tell myself, if I can drive this, any female too can drive.
Get the impression Dan has just had a quick rethink. He started it saying, good on her. And he also says, I wonder what rates they're on there. And then he quickly came back, having heard a bit more of the video. Hang on a minute. Where is it? No chance you'd see me in 40 degrees Celsius. Hell no. That is properly warm. I mean, the aircon would help, but you've still got to get in the cab, haven't you? That's true. All in your mind. All in your mind. Yeah. Listen, if she's an inspiration to a few more ladies in the industry, then fair play to her. We've got one more film for you, which is part of our Voyage to Vegas series, before I go over to my morning monologue. So let's get this out of the way, and I'll show you our Voyage to Vegas for the day and show you who's in it. Now, Steelwrist are going to be at ConExpo. They were at the last ConExpo, and they actually had the foresight to film their stand last time to pre-promote their stand this time, which is precisely what I'm about to show you. There's a bit where there's a demonstration going on. This is not a long film. It's only about half a minute, but there's a bit where there's a demonstration going on. And over in the background is a guy with a camera. Have a look. Did you spot him? I bet you didn't. Let me show you this. Here we go. You see that bloke there in the plaid shirt? There's an arrow pointing right at his head. That's Fred, that is. Yeah, that's Fred filming the Steelwrist stand from the other side. It may have been me filming from this side. I don't actually know. I can't remember. But yeah, that's Fred. You don't get to see him very often, so I thought I'd highlight that. Anyway, people, that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. And I hope to see you again very, very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will be back immediately after. Hang on a minute. There's something in the chat. Dan saying, wow, yeah, Fred on camera. Who'd have thunk it? Yes, let's do this. I think we can all agree that the demolition and construction industry is not without its problems. Even the eternal optimist wearing rose-tinted spectacles can see that all is not well within this sector and its massed ranks. And yet, rather than seeking solutions, we've apparently taken a different approach, hiding behind lazy, unproven tropes and excuses and assumptions. We tell ourselves, for example, that young people have no interest in working within this sector. We label them lazy, feckless, and interested only in jobs that take place in front of a computer screen. The truth is that the industry has done a truly terrible job of reaching out to the very young people it so desperately needs. It's done precious little to explain that not all demolition and construction jobs are fraught with danger, or that a significant amount of work takes place away from the muck and bullets of an actual site. We've failed to convince them that this is a viable career choice. But instead of fessing up, it's much easier to blame the youth for our own internal shortcomings. We all see the headlines: migrant workers coming over here, stealing our jobs. We don't look any further. Even in full rage bait mode, the Daily Mail has never, ever reported on a migrant worker actually stealing a job, because that's not how employment works. A company has a vacancy, they advertise that position, and they appoint the person they consider best suited to the role, regardless of whether that person is black, brown, white, Christian, Jew, or Muslim. There's no theft. But accusing migrant workers of job theft is much more comfortable than admitting our own failure to attract and retain native-born workers, or to accept that working within the sector is often a soul-destroying, thankless, and toxic task. By and large, women want to work in this sector even less than young people. We tell ourselves that the work is too physical for them, or bizarrely that they're put off by PPE that doesn't accommodate their feminine form. We tell ourselves this because it's far easier than addressing the misogyny that persists on many sites and in many offices, or admitting that we've failed to address the countless instances of sexual harassment. Once again, we take the easy way out and hide behind a familiar trope. We have risk assessments, toolbox talks, pre-start briefings, training matrices and competence cards. We've appointed health and safety managers and health and safety advocates. Yet construction remains the deadliest industry sector in the UK. Why? Because none of these systems and protocols actually move the safety needle. We tell ourselves otherwise, of course. We tell ourselves that we're doing our best to protect our workers without actually changing the structural things that place them in danger. As an industry, we find ourselves in the midst of a mental health crisis. Our sector has a suicide rate that is shockingly high. We could take a holistic look at our working practices and make our industry less of a pressure cooker. But we don't. We prefer to hide behind mental health awareness courses and mental health first aiders. Worse still, we do our best to separate suicide from the sector. Oh, just because he killed himself on site doesn't mean it was actually industry related. Yeah, I'm sure a suicide rate that's almost 4 times the national average really is nothing more than a massive coincidence. When the spotlight falls upon corruption, we tell ourselves it's just a few bad apples or a few brown envelopes stuffed with cash. But collusion, like the tango, takes two. Do those who dabble in bid rigging have some sixth sense with which they can identify potential co-conspirators? Or is collusion really so commonplace that they feel empowered to tap up anyone and everyone? Even in our interactions with equipment, we accept false wisdom. Brand A machines are unreliable. Brand B is underpowered. Brand C is uncomfortable. Really? All of them? If an equipment manufacturer has built a customer base, a global customer base, and turns over billions each year, have they managed that, really, with unreliable, underpowered, and uncomfortable machines? That would be miraculous. The truth is that someone may have had a bad experience with a machine, a dealer, or a manufacturer in the dim and distant past. And here we are, years or even decades later, still believing every machine to roll off that company's production line is a pup. Even more bizarrely, we dismiss new innovations without seeing them in action. We tell ourselves, that will never work or that won't catch on. A single glance at a YouTube video and we've already decided there's no operator, application, or owner who might ever need such a thing. Trust me, if a manufacturer has invested the time and the capital to bring something new to market, they've done their homework. Their new product might not be for you, but it will be for someone. In so many instances, we are lying to ourselves because the truth is too uncomfortable, too unpalatable. The solutions are too challenging. But maybe if we were honest, we might find that the industry's biggest problems are not the muck and bullets, they're the smoke and mirrors. There you are. Let me move that out of the way so I can see what's going on. How are we all today? Let's go over into the chat. We don't need that. Somebody offering to get me viewers over on Twitch. A viewer over on Twitch would be quite nice. But hey, listen, we soldier on. We started very poorly in the other areas as well. Andy Thornton says we need to take the pressure off the people and put it into the system. If the system was structured to accommodate the pressure, then we wouldn't rely on the individual to suck it up. No. Let me put mental health issues and suicides into a little bag, and let me take that bag and put that over there just for a moment. I'll fetch it back in a second. But let's take mental health and suicide and all of that kind of thing, and stress and anxiety. We'll take that and put that over there. Okay. Would we have so many projects running over schedule and over budget if we actually allowed the time that they really take? Every time somebody announces in Construction Inquirer or Construction Index or Building Magazine or Construction News, or even here on this show, somebody's won a new project for a stretch of road, a stretch of railway, a bridge, a building, a skyscraper, whatever it might be. And it's always accompanied by the budget is 100 million and it's going to be completed by 2027. Anybody in this industry, me, you, not being cynical, but I think we all now look at that and go, 100 million in a year and a half. Nah. That ain't going to happen. And sure enough, this happens more if it's a particularly high-profile public project. But sooner or later, you can check back and find that the 100 million actually became 120, 130, 150 million. And the 18 months that they'd originally allocated to doing the job is now going to be 2.5 years. We could overcome that if we were actually honest. If we would actually say, well, we've not bid 100 million because that is the actual cost. We've bid 100 million because that is what it will take for us to win the job. And then once the job is underway, we can find all of these other extras and unseen and unforeseen challenges for which we can charge more. In the demolition world, we'll do that for £1 million. Oh, but look, we've found asbestos. Oh, look, we've found bats or pigeons or newts or toads or whatever the fuck it might be. And as a result, we're going to be very late in delivery and it's going to cost you more money. In other words, the lowest bid is bollocks, because we all know exactly how it's going to work. You've got 5 bids of 1.5 million and somebody's coming in at $1 million. They will get the job by and large. And they've got that job knowing full well that they will now seek ways of basically bumping up the cost of that to make the 1.5 million that everybody else was bidding in the first place. That's the absolute truth. Who are we kidding ourselves? Who are we kidding with all this? And the problem is with all of this, and let me reach back for my bag of anxiety. There you are. Let's bring that back into the fore. We've won a job that we know will take 18 months, but the client expects it to be done in a year. So what happens? The client at the top shouts at the main contractor. The main contractor shouts at the subcontractor. The subcontractor shouts at the specialist subcontractor, and the specialist subcontractor shouts at its employees. So unreasonable expectations becomes stress and hassle and unpleasantness at worker level. Every single day, on pretty much every single project. Now, we could, if we had the collective will, we could solve that. I always refer back to this. We know full well that come the end of the year, when the Health and Safety Executive releases its figures for annual fatalities within the sector, the biggest killer will have been falls from height. Now, having had that for the last 10, 15, 30 years, falls from height being our biggest killer, you might have thought that by now we'd have all taken a bit of a step back and said, well, what say we stop sending men and women up to work at height, and we use a bit of robotics, or we use a bit of automation, or we build in a different way that requires, going back to, demolition, top-down way, encapsulate the building and it comes down within so that nobody can fall. We could do that. But no, we don't do that, because that's quite complicated. That means a quite significant overhaul in how we do things. It's much easier to just carry on the way we're going and hope and pray that people don't fall off and die. How does that make any sense? Exactly the same with the system of procurement in this industry. We know full well, by and large, lowest bid gets the job. When the lowest bid gets the job, they will then find new ways, often very creative and artistic, to increase the cost that they originally quoted to make sure that they're actually covering their own costs. We're fooling ourselves across every site, across every project, up and down the country. We're fooling ourselves because we're not brave enough to take that step. The one that gets my goat in all of this, we had a lady driving a dump truck, a Komatsu dump truck, in a video a couple of minutes ago. You saw her, little tiny girl, and I mean that in the nicest possible way, little tiny. Her job doesn't require her to be big and strong and strapping. Her PPE seemed all right to me. I don't know how comfortable it was for her, but it seemed all right. So we can accommodate women. It's not a question of physical strength. It's not a question of stamina or endurance. It's not a question of whether you can cram your hips into a pair of regular PPE trousers. The absolute truth is that, by and large, UK construction and demolition sites are pretty toxic for women. And it goes way, way, way beyond sarky comments about what's a girl doing what's a girl like you doing in a joint like this. It goes way beyond that. We all know it does. Now, bearing in mind the skill shortage, you would think that as an industry, we might have done the maths and said, well, 51% of the UK population is female. If we could convince a few more women to join the industry, then maybe we could actually put a big, big dent into that skill shortage. And in theory, I believe that to be right. But would I want to send my daughter, wife, niece onto a site where at best they're probably going to get a degree of abuse, and at worst they're going to be potentially sexually harassed? The problem of women coming into this industry, trust me, is not how they look in their PPE. It's the fact that they shouldn't have to tolerate the kind of behaviour that takes place on our site. And for women, read ethnic minorities, read gay and trans people as well. If I were a trans person, if I were a gay man, it would probably be the last industry sector that I would consider working in. And I would certainly be keeping my gender orientation, my sexual preferences on the down low. I would not wish to be an openly gay man in this industry. And yet, we know full well, there will be gay men and women, trans men and women out there who would do a perfectly good job in this industry, but we don't give them the chance. And we kind of suggest that it's somehow their fault, when in actual fact, we've failed to remove the toxicity from the industry that makes this such an unforgiving sector. It's a blame game. I can be blamed for not taking the lowest bid, but I can't be blamed for unforeseen delay. Yeah, absolutely. But even that blame of not taking the lowest bid, even that very rarely happens. And if they do actually take the lowest bid and something goes awry, to the best of my knowledge, I don't have my finger in every single pie, but to the best of my knowledge, no client has ever actually been prosecuted for having chosen the lowest bid without doing their due diligence. Andy said it's embedded in the culture. Now, Jim says this. Now, bearing in mind, Jim's a big strapping lad. I'm pleased to hear that. Never had any of these discriminations on sites or gangs I've worked at. I'm very pleased to hear that. And let's be honest, some of what I'm saying is sort of generalizations. I'm sure there are sites and companies that are welcoming to women, welcoming to gay and trans people, welcoming to brown or black people. I'm sure they do exist. But I also wonder if, Jim, your presence is partly why you've never encountered it. We were talking about this yesterday, if you remember rightly, whenever it was, Monday possibly, about, these Herberts setting fire to a bin at McDonald's. And I was sat there thinking, well, if one of them gets close enough, I'll probably give them a clip round the ear. So I think my take on things and my presence may discourage that kind of thing. If I walked into a pub, which is unlikely because I don't drink, but if I walked into a pub and somebody was having a pop at the barmaid or a woman, I'd step in. I'm not on my watch, pal. That's not happening. And I'm genuinely, I'm not making myself out to be some kind of hero. I've genuinely done this in the past. I got a phone call one night, just very quickly. Got a phone call one night from Fred, who'd gone down to the local shops. And there's a little alleyway goes under the railway bridge just down the end of our road here. And he said there was a guy literally screaming into the face of a young woman. 30 seconds later, I'd put my coat on, put my trainers on, and I'd run down there and basically said, are you okay? And she was like, it's fine. And I have to say, the guy was pretty chilled. He said, look, we are having an argument, but I would never harm her. And I said to her, are you absolutely sure? She said, go away. I'm fine. I went and found Fred, and when we came back, I actually stopped again. They still stood there talking, and I actually said, "Are you sure you're okay?" And she said, "No, really, really appreciate you intervening, but I'm absolutely fine." And I went on my way. But there's no way that's happening on my watch. No way. And yet, I think elsewhere in the industry, it is allowed. It is dismissed as banter. It's all the lads together. And if one of the people happens to be particularly loud, particularly vocal, particularly influential on the site, and they are indulging in, feminist, racist, transphobic, homophobic language, very, very easily the rest of the site can follow suit. And what started out as one racist, misogynist becomes a toxic site very, very easily. I've never had any issues, but it's close when my anger made them think twice next time. Yeah. Personally, I do actually think that is step number one. I don't think the employers, the clients, the major contractors, I don't think they have any real interest in fixing things like this, racism, homophobia, sexism, and that kind of thing. So who does get to fix that? The only people that can fix that are the people that are seeing it on a day-to-day basis. The chances are, I don't know who the chief executive of Balfour Beatty is, but if there was a case of sexual harassment on one of his sites, I don't suppose he'd even know about it. I don't suppose he'd even be made aware. I don't for one moment, I don't think that HR is going up and saying, Mr. Chief Exec, Fred Bloggs, a woman's been abused on one of your sites. Oh, leave it with me. I'm rolling up my sleeves now. I'm going to go and sort it out. I don't believe that was the case. The only people that are likely ever to sort that out are the people that are actually there on the ground seeing it happen. And that, sadly, I think is me, you, Jim, Dan, Gary. It's the way it is. But going back to the main crux of my morning monologue, and I will let you all get on with your day in a moment. That's our thing now in this industry. We don't fix a thing, we call a thing another thing. And we allow it to continue because it now has another name. As an industry, again, there will be exceptions. As an industry, there will be some companies that have got a very, very good and long-standing relationship with their nearest school or college or university, and they regularly visit and they regularly encourage young people to come and see their sites, and they make them feel very welcome, and they keep them informed of job possibilities and opportunities. And we're not just digging holes in the ground, we're flying drones and we're working computers. They're doing all of that, but that's happening in isolation. As an industry, we've done a really, really terrible job of bridging the gap between ourselves and the education system. But to make ourselves feel good about that, we tell ourselves, oh, young people of today are all lazy, feckless. They all want to be TikTokers. And how is that any different to when I was a kid? I wanted to be a footballer. Generation before that wanted to be an astronaut. Generation before that wanted to be a train driver. It's no different. But previous generations, through organizations like the CITB, they actually had strong working two-way relationships with the education system. And we've, on our watch, in my career span, we've allowed that to slip. And now, to cover our arse, we can point and say, oh, it's the kids. They don't want to be part of this. Don't want to be part of what? You don't even tell them what you do. Even hiding behind 7-foot tall hoardings. Ask the average person, what's construction? I haven't got a fucking idea because I've never seen it. Whereas I know full well there are people in our audience right now, because we've talked about it before, who were first inspired to take a role in this job, either because they got exposed to it through relatives, aunts, uncles, grandfathers, fathers, or because while they were sat in school, they were watching a row of houses being built, a motorway being built, a road being built, a bridge being built. They watched it and thought, I want a piece of that. We don't do that anymore. We hide. We put everything behind a holding because we don't want anyone seeing what we're up to. One place I've seen it firsthand is in the scaffolding industry. What have you seen? What have you seen, Andy? We need to know. Remember 2 Indian guys on a squib job in Nottingham, and a wanker of a gate man was ridiculing them. I stood up and told them to shut the F up. They're just doing their job. Yeah. But how many people do that? How many people do that? There you are. Dan, you and I are of one mind on that. We all bleed and piss the same colour. Yes, we do. Because they're not of England, you think you can talk down to them. I asked him to sort this. He left. No one was backing him up. Never lost it the way I did that day. Hell have no fury like a nuts Irishman. Yeah. I mean, I don't even think it needs to be that. I mean, I just think it's that, being dragged along. And I remember when I was younger, when you're with all your mates, there is like that hive mind thing, isn't there? One of your mates is getting drunk, so you all get drunk, and one of your mates is shouting at a bunch of girls, and you're all shouting at a bunch of girls, and so on down the line. But knowing what I know now, I'd take myself out of that. Or if it had overstepped the mark, as I said, pull them on it. Hang on, enough. He, she, they are just doing their job. Behave yourself. And if they can't, well, okay, you either separate yourself from them, or as Dan has suggested, you give them a clip round the ear. And it wouldn't take much. It wouldn't take much. I mean, I'm sat here saying this, and let's take the feminism or the misogyny as the target here. If there are best part of 3 million people working in this industry, bearing in mind about 14% of them are women, so let's say there's 2.3 million people, 2.3 million men working in this industry. The absolute truth is, the ones that are truly misogynistic, truly toxic, should not be allowed to work anywhere near women. Couple of 100, 1,000 maybe. Even if it was 5,000, they're a tiny fraction of our overall workforce. You weed all those out, you've just made the industry a whole lot better. Not only have you weeded them out so their immediate threat and their toxicity is gone, but you've also shown the rest of the industry, we don't tolerate that. This is a workplace. Whether you're black, brown, green, purple, male, female, somewhere in between the two, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, we're all, as Dan has rightly said, we all bleed and piss the same colour, and we're all at work for the same reason. We want to earn a few quid for our families. That's it. It ain't any more complicated than that. There's my thought for the day. I need a cup of tea, people, and I've already taken up an hour and 10 minutes of your time, which is way over the top. So I'm going to let you all go and do your thing. I'll be back tomorrow for yet more of the same. Till then, everybody, have a good day. If you are working alongside a young person, a female person, a brown person, a black person, a person whose gender you can't readily identify, be nice. Won't cost you anything. Just be nice. On that note, I'll see you tomorrow. All the best.